And that confidence for me is the secret. I can teach you to do good slides and stand up and wave your arms around in a way that is engaging. But once you start doing it, that confidence transfers into lots of other areas of your life.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Today I'm chatting to Duncan Yellowlees. Duncan is a presentation skills trainer. I knew him by reputation before I met him, having heard rave reviews about his training, and then we connected as we both live in the Newcastle area and inhabit similar freelance worlds. Duncan trains researchers to communicate better, tell stories about their work, connect with different audiences and collaborate more effectively. As you'll hear, he found his way to this work by way of engineering, science communication and theatre. In our conversation, we talk about building confidence, freelance life, imposter syndrome and why Duncan would like to ban academic posters. Keep listening to find out why. In this chat, there are a couple of what in my house are known as level 3 swears, with level 1 being the worst, so they're not very bad, but if you have sensitive ears nearby, maybe save this episode for your headphones. Otherwise, enjoy. Thank you for joining us today, Duncan. First of all, could you just tell us a bit about what it is that you do and how you got into this kind of work?
Well, the short answer first is what I do is I train researchers and people working in research to communicate their work better. So specifically to give presentations better, because academic conferences are awful and boring and everybody hates them, and it would be better if all the talks were better. But also storytelling and thinking about how do you connect to different audiences, people doing public engagement, people doing industry collaboration work, sometimes the kind of big communication kind of theory stuff where those sorts of collaborations fall down because of the way people communicate or lack of communication. Generally trying to make academia a happy, more connected, more confident space. And that confidence for me is the secret. I can teach you to do good slides and stand up and wave your arms around in a way that is engaging. But once you start doing it, that confidence transfers into lots of other areas of your life. And I think researchers, particularly PhD students who are working on their own stuff for the first time, finding their own voice and being able to own their work with confidence is a really powerful thing. So that's what I do. And I run my own business doing that. Have been doing so for 5 years now. And how did I get here is longer and more rambling. How I got here was I did engineering, first of all, back in the day at Edinburgh University, but lots of theatre as well. I've always done theatre as a child. I got interested. I knew I didn't want to do engineering properly because I don't like maths. And I got interested in telling the stories of historical engineers. There's some, in the UK, we have a very rich industrial heritage, and I found the stories of those engineers kind of fascinating and interesting. So I thought I should probably learn a bit about the history of science if I'm going to do this and tell those stories. Basically, I wanted to be the Brian Cox for the history of engineering. It's very niche, nice. Like a young Fred Dibner. That was the goal, right? To be on telly chatting about engineers down coal mines who invented steam things or whatever. That was the dream. So I thought I should learn a bit about that. I went to Manchester to do a master's in the history of science, which had a science communication module. I discovered that I was more interested in the comm bit than the sci bit of SciComm, which I always have been. What makes people tick? How do you make people listen to you? How do you make something interesting to readers? My dissertation was about, can you use theatre to communicate science? No. You can, but it's much better at doing other things. And then I ended up working at the Centre for Life, which is a science centre, a bit like the Science Museum in Newcastle, teaching, writing science shows and demonstration shows where I got to blow stuff up on stage in front of school children and training performers to blow stuff up on stage in front of school children, and loved that for a bit, and then decided I didn't like having a boss, so struck out on my own doing this, and realized that what I had gathered over the years was a skill in training people and quite a good understanding of what makes audiences interested in stuff. I really liked working with academics because I love seeing all the different bits of research, and it felt like a business that could be made successful. So that's what I set up.
Yeah, and here you are, still 5 years down the line. So it's clearly
5 years down the line,
going
80%
okay.
of startups fail, and I'm still here. So we are ahead of the crew, ahead of the crowd a little bit. No, it's going really well, and it feels like it has become a fairly well-established business. I think I have some people tell me I have a reputation out there in the world. Quite what for, I don't know, but the work keeps coming in, and it's now the next stage about thinking about what's next and how to create it and build it and work up from the foundations that I've built over the last 5 years, which is quite an exciting place to be, really.
So on your journey, whether that's over the last 5 years of building your business or over, your career up to that point, what are the sort of biggest challenges that you've faced?
Ooh, good question. So first of all, it's worth noting and being aware that I am a straight white male from a pretty moneyed background, relatively speaking. My challenges have been significantly less than many other people in the world, but there are some things. Yeah, setting up your own business is tough. It's tricky. One of the things that has made a huge difference, whether I saw it as a challenge at the time, I don't know, but getting my head around it has really changed things, is having a focus, a really clear focus. So knowing, in the small business world, people talk about finding your niche a lot. And most people who are freelance, or particularly in the public engagement or science communication space, a lot of freelancers do an awful lot of different stuff. So people will do event creation and evaluation and training workshops and presentation skills and how to write your dissertation. And, they'll offer a whole bunch of different things. And lots of people work like that, and it's great. It gives you a wide portfolio. Probably keeps the work fresh and interesting because you're doing different stuff all of the time. But since I decided to go very focused, I do presentation skills for researchers. I don't do evaluation. I used to do more general public engagement type work, but since I've been out of the loop really about what's current and what the new research is, and last time I was paying attention, Science Capital was the big thing. So that's kind of, I don't feel like I know enough to be a trainer on that anymore. But having that focus has really changed a lot of things about running the business and made things a lot easier. So I quite like that, and realizing that was there. Working on your own's a challenge. It's just me. I have other people I work with sometimes, and it's always a delight when I do, either in collaborations, or I have a few other trainers who work for me work under me to deliver workshops when I can't be in two places at once. And it's a delight to work with people. I really enjoy it. It's really fun. Collaboration always tends to bring new ideas or new things into the mix and fight some of the loneliness you get when you're working for yourself. And I think that's true for freelancers and small business people, but also for researchers. Often I've talked in the past about research is quite like being a freelancer. And the way it works, and the self-promotion and the working things up, and you're on your own, building a personal brand essentially. And I think lots of folk in the research adjacent sector would resonate with some of that as well, particularly those of us who are self-employed or freelance or whatever. And I think that connecting with people and building networks it's a really useful thing to do. It's a challenge because sometimes I really can't be bothered. The other challenge that I have, actually, that I don't think I've ever talked about this before. I am really rubbish at not being jealous of what other people in the space are doing.
It's
So
very honest.
there's not many of us who do what I do, but there's a few. And I've been around for 5 years now. I'm sort of aware of who the people are, and there's a reason I don't follow many of them on social media, because I find it very difficult to deal with, what we all do, which is, hey, I went to do a thing and it was really successful and everybody's wonderful and life is brilliant. It's what social media tells you, right? And I find it very tricky to see that from other people doing what I do and not get floods of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and none of which is real, because the business is good. I've got work. It's not, it's going well, but it's very easy to look at other people and see what they're doing as better or more effective or more knowledgeable, or they put that tweet out that was particularly insightful. Clearly they think way more deeply about all this stuff than I do, and I'm rubbish, and all of that stuff.
Comparing your insides with other people's outsides, as they say.
And that's a really good way of putting it. And I don't know if you've found this with your own stuff, but when you're freelance, a lot of your self-identity gets wrapped up in the business, in the work. And I don't have children. I don't have other things to wrap my self-identity around, to some extent, and so that can become a little tricky and make some of the networking stuff a little bit harder, because a little bit of me is resistant to going and mingling with all the other research adjacent folk, because they'll find me out, and they'll find out that I don't know very much about pedagogy, and I all these, or whatever it is. So that, I think, is an interesting challenge and a balance, and I have a suspicion that my networks could be stronger if and they're good, but I think they could be stronger and more empowered if I was less hesitant to go and mix with other people who do what I do.
I think that's completely normal, though. I think that everybody finds networking daunting, and all the comparison and the imposter syndrome and all that sort of stuff really common, isn't it?
There you go. I've never talked about that before. It's a first for this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when it comes to the whole being a freelancer and finding people to talk to, I've started a whole podcast just so I can talk to people. So there we go. So moving from maybe the lows to some of the highs, what have you done that you're really proud of?
I'm still here. That is, as I said, it is the statistic that gets bandied around is 80% of startups fail in their first 5 years. And my company is in no danger of failing, and so that is something to be, it's one of the things that I can remind myself of when the imposter syndrome comes in. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the reviews I get. So one of the things, and this is actually a tip if people don't do this, who are in the research adjacent space or doing workshops or training or whatever, is get feedback on everything you do and keep it. I have a great big Word document that is full of people saying, love this workshop, it was fantastic, you learned this thing, that was great, and that as a resource to read back through is really useful, as well as a resource to use for marketing purposes or send back to your client or whatever, is great. So I know I'm good. Because I have that, and I'm quite proud of that. It is a skill set I have. People think the people enjoy the workshops, people get stuff from it. I am doing useful things for people. So I have built something that is valuable to people, and people have a good experience with. And I get the occasional, DM or Twitter or email from somebody saying, I used the stuff you told me in a presentation or a talk and it went really well, and I got loads of positive feedback, and that stuff I'm really proud of. What else am I proud of? When I worked at the Centre for Life, I made a little thing that we called the wobbler that I was really proud of. I had this is a totally different end of the spectrum of things to be proud of. This is a tiny thing. I worked out that you can use a hole punch to make a hole in lolly sticks, and if you do that, you can put a straw through the hole and you've got a pivot, so you can make pendulums. And that was just like, it was a flash moment of insight, and I made a little thing out of a paper cup with this lolly stick pendulum, a bit like a nodding dog in the back of your car that little kids could make at life. It's called the Wobbler.
Are there pictures or videos of this anyway?
I mean, you could probably, if you Google Duncan Wobbler, I don't know what it might come up. It was the Alam Shah, who is an incredible teacher and educationist, did a little series last Christmas about gifts you can make at home, or fun craft activity things, science things you can make at home. He's got an incredible book out about kind of tinkering and making stuff with your kids. And I don't think the Wobbler's in there, but we did a little series of videos, the 12 videos of Christmas last year. So I think they're it might be on the RI website. If it was the RI, I'm not sure.
I'll investigate, see if I can put a link in the show notes.
Yes, put the link in the show notes. I'll find it for you. So that's cool as a total moment of like, my engineering roots are still there. I like making things. I have a workshop in my garage and I make stuff and I build things. And I find it weirdly easier to be proud of something I've made with my hands. I built the business or the confidence I've instilled in other people, or some of the other things that are a little bit more ephemeral I find it easier to, if I've got a thing that I can show you and people go, oh, isn't it nice?
Yeah. Something more tangible. Don't you make knives?
I do make knives. Yes. I make, this is a hobby that got out of hand. A few years ago, I saw on Twitter a guy who makes knives in Sheffield, and they are incredible, beautiful works of art. And I like cooking, always enjoy cooking. And if anybody who likes cooking, having a shit knife, can we swear? Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having a shit knife is the most annoying thing in the world. And if you go away to staying somewhere away in a kitchen that's not yours, and the knives are rubbish and blunt, and it's really annoying. Airbnbs always have terrible knives because nobody ever bothers to sharpen them. And I thought, enough of this. I'm going to teach myself to do it, and you can learn anything on the internet. And so I did. And I now make them. I spent a couple of years taking commissions.
Yeah.
And I now just make them for sort of friends and families and birthdays and weddings and things. But I hand make kitchen knives.
Nice.
They are quite nice, if I do say so myself. I like making things with my hands.
Yeah.
That's what I'm proud of. I'm really proud of community, which was a slightly risky thing that I did last year, and it's still ongoing. I mentioned at the start about what's next for the business and building things up. And one of the irritations I had with doing workshops is that I turn up and we have a great 2 hours and we talk about stuff and I teach people things and it's great and everyone smiles and says, isn't this useful? And then I disappear and they go back to emails and work and all the other stuff. And I don't get to see long-term impact or long-term engagement. And that's sort of deliberate because from a work perspective and a business perspective, short-term projects are significantly less admin. There's significantly less chance that they grow arms and legs and go out with the remit that you budgeted, and then you end up doing work you're not being paid for. And so I quite like, from a work perspective, that short one-off, do the thing, pay me for the thing, end of. But I don't get to see that development in people. I don't get to see people trying the techniques. I don't get to be the support further down the road. Presentation skills are one of those things where I can teach you some stuff in 2 hours. I can't make you a great presenter in 2 hours.
Yeah.
You need to go out and do it and reflect on it and practice. And so I built community as a place for researchers to help each other do that, and for me to help do that. So it's an online private forum space, basically, with a bunch of resources, tips and hints and events. And we get together every month. We've got one this evening, actually, where we get together and people who are working on presentations bring them to try out in front of the members and get feedback, and we talk about things, and I do a little bit of teaching sometimes, and it's good. It's really good. I think the folk who are in it find real value in it, and find support. We've got people who, a year ago would burst into tears when they got up on a stage, and now are volunteering to do talks and are doing their first undergrad lectures and things, and getting through it, and feeling kind of more confident. And so for me, I get to see that progression now, and I get to help people in that longer, less intensive intervention and touch points, but longer term, and supporting people and seeing them support each other, which I think is really cool. So I'm very proud of that. I'm excited about what it could become. We'll see if it does or not.
And is that something that's just open to anybody to join?
Yes, anybody can sign up. I'll give you a link to drop in the show notes. It's ridiculously cheap. It's £25 for a year's worth of membership. But it's the idea was that it can be lonely being the only person in your department who cares about communicating your research or doing good presentations or getting good at it. And often nobody teaches you how to do it. Often nobody has the time to watch you do a presentation and give you some feedback. So that's what it's for. For people who want to develop their skills, network, meet other people. It's totally interdisciplinary, which I think is really important as well, because you get different perspectives from different areas of research, which is cool. So that I'm proud of that. Fun. That's quite cool.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, lots and lots to be proud of then. I think once you get into it. Yeah.
It's one of those things, isn't it? You never see them. You never see them when you're in every day. But if you stop and
think about it. Yeah, absolutely. So if you had a magic wand and an unlimited budget, what would you change? What would you do about the world that you work in?
Oh, there's a very vague one, which I'd make academic conferences better.
How would you make them better?
I would ban posters. For starters. Part of the problem I think with academic conferences is that there's very little space for creativity and fun.
Yeah.
So you take this whole group of bright, wonderful, interested, passionate, creative people and force them to do things a certain way, and condense information into very dry, detail-orientated, focused things. And anybody who's been to one of those conferences knows that most of the time the most valuable bit is networking and coffee and meeting people and chatting. And wouldn't it be lovely if the most valuable bit was the talks, because they were inspirational? And I know sometimes they can be, but if everyone was inspirational and exciting and different and creative, and we encouraged creative ways of communicating, they were more interactive. I did a workshop on Tuesday, where we got a bunch of researchers to tell stories we were in a museum, and they had to go around the museum and find stories and tell stories using a bunch of different props. And one of the groups did a puppet show, and wouldn't that be lovely, right? You go to an academic poster session and there's a little puppet show of somebody's research, or there is
sign me up.
Yeah, exactly, right. And just make these spaces fun and rewarding and really reach for their potential, because as I say, that researchers themselves are always wonderful, fascinating, interesting people, and then the culture seems to suck all the life out of it sometimes. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to fix that, and it would be about providing permission and training and confidence for people to do things a little bit differently. If you are interested in this, it's in the pipeline somewhere. Doing an academic non-conference.
Nice.
Is there.
Nice.
But that's what I'd like to do. And I guess long term, making the institutions care about communicating the work. So often communication skills gets put into focus only as part of public engagement, or as outreach work or impact, whereas it should be a core part. It's in every survey anybody ever does about what are the skills that the workplace and the industry needs. Communication skills are in the top 5 every single time. And it's just not taught. It should be a core part of every undergraduate program, certainly at master's and PhD level. It should, because you're expected, it's part of your job, then you're expected to go out and talk about it. It should be a core part of the training and valued as such, but it's not. And that would be nice. That'd be nice. I mean, there's probably many other more worthwhile things you could spend £1 million on, or an unlimited budget on. But in my area, that stuff would be cool.
Yeah, you're allowed to focus on what's
on my bit.
On your bit, exactly. We can't all fix everything. So yeah, I think that we should probably think about wrapping up. But just looking at the time, just to give you an opportunity now to give a shout out to other people who are doing great work in your field, or just great people that you've worked with.
Great adjacent people. So there's a couple that spring to mind. Jenny Smith, who is up here in Newcastle, is fabulous. And she teaches networking, which is not something anybody ever thinks about teaching or needing taught. And it's very, very good. She's actually doing a PhD now at Durham University about networking and the impact of networking for small businesses. But she does really cool stuff. She's also the sort of person who's a little like bundle of joy and lights up rooms that she goes into, who's fabulous. Other people doing incredible work in slightly different spaces. Hannah Ayub she's an illustrator who does an illustrator and kind of with the background in events and science communication and that kind of stuff, is incredible. Go give Hannah loads of work. Similarly, Sarah Cosgriff, who doing incredible work actually she does a lot of stuff on TikTok, I think, or used to, but in the communication of sexuality space and talking about biases and that's that sort of training and awareness of that, and going into schools as well and having those conversations and talking about representation. Yeah, doing really good and important stuff, and they're all fantastic people to work for and work with. So those some shout outs for you, Sarah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, we'll find links for them and put them in the show notes as well. So just remains to say thank you so much for coming along, chatting today. It's been really interesting. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add before we wrap up.
No, it's been a complete pleasure. Thank you very much. People, I'm sure there'll be links in the show notes about where people can find me.
Yeah.
I have a newsletter of presentation hints and tips and things that's totally free that you can sign up to. And
where's the best place for people to find you?
Best place for people to find me is probably still Twitter, if it's still here next week, or when this comes out. If Twitter has imploded, then I'm on LinkedIn and I am on Mastodon as well. But we shall see whether Mastodon kind of works and takes off in the academic space. But LinkedIn is probably a safe bet for now.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. You can find show notes and other episodes at researchadjacent.com. I would absolutely love to hear what you think of the show, so please get in touch. You can drop us a message via researchadjacent.com or find us on social media at resadjacent. And if you've enjoyed the show, please think about sharing it, subscribing or leaving a review so that other people can find us too. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.